Good evening and welcome to the WDSU News Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel. Tonight we're talking about a topic that kind of relates to sports and business here on this Super Bowl Sunday, the future of Saints quarterback Drew Brees. To talk about this, we have a good panel. Brent Martell from the Associated Press, Catherine Terrell from The Athletic, and Fletcher Mackel from WDSU. So let's just start off with this, with Drew Brees' future. It's something that everybody watching this out there wants to know about. Will he be back with the Saints? Let's just open the discussion to that. Will Drew Brees be back with the Saints?
I think so. I think there's too many reasons for him not to be back. The team is good. They've got a really good roster. He's still playing at a high level, and it's a lot of money to walk away from. So I understand that there were reports earlier this week at 41 years old, he's considering retirement. But my belief is that he's definitely coming back. Is that fair to say?
Well, every time I hear this talk, and honestly, it kind of surprises me to hear it at all, I think back to, what was it, October, when he was on the sideline and Teddy Bridgewater is starting, and Brees just looks like a man who is desperate to get back on the field. And I just don't know how you go from that to retiring in 6 months. I get that it happens, but I'd be pretty surprised.
How about you, Brett? What are your thoughts on, does Drew Brees come back, or is this it for him?
Well, I understand the inclination for people to believe he may be ready to retire at 41 and with 4 kids and so forth, but there are a lot of reasons for him to come back. One, he's coming off arguably the second most efficient season in NFL history to himself, and so he's still one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the most. You know, people can talk about arm strength all they want, but if you're making the passes and running the offense and largely winning games, then you're effective. I get the impression that, much like with the Mannings, Drew's family does not have a problem with his career. In fact, I think his children love the fact that he's the Saints quarterback, and he likes the fact that they're old enough now that he can share that relatively unique experience with them. And then people have, I think, an obligation, you know, even though he's made over $200 million already just playing football, never mind endorsements, a lot of people feel an obligation to take advantage of the value they command in the marketplace while they can. He still commands a lot of value, and while he's playing, his endorsements are worth more too. So, you know, those are all reasons why he should continue to play.
Let's just, like a fantasy football draft, we started with Fletcher and ended with Brett. We'll come back down the line this way. We're going to talk about the money in a second, because that is important, and it's a key component of this. But let's talk about the family issue here. He's got a wife. He's got 4 kids. And I'm going to bring up something that happened tragically last week, the Kobe Bryant factor here. Obviously, everybody feels for Kobe, his family, what's going on, and you realize how precious life is. Kobe Bryant was right around Drew Brees' age when he tragically died last weekend. Does Drew Brees say, you know what, more time with the kids is valuable? We never know when life is going to end here. So does he weigh factors like that and say, you know what, maybe it is time for me to spend more time with my 4 children and my wife?
Well, I'm sure that is cause for considerable reflection by him and everybody else. Whether that's enough to outweigh everything else is, you know, I guess is up to him. But like I said before, I think that he actually believes that continuing to play quarterback while he still can is an asset to his family life.
I think a lot of people, obviously the Kobe Bryant situation is tragic, and I think as a family man, Drew is thinking about that, but I think a lot of people are projecting their own thoughts onto him. We don't actually know what he's thinking. But a few years ago, I covered him at the Pro Bowl, I think it was 2014 or 15, and I asked if it meant something to him for his kids to be old enough to watch him play, and he said it did. He kept playing so that they would be old enough to understand what it meant for them to see him, I guess, in his prime or still playing at a high level, and I think the whole family loves it. So, I mean, I think that, as Brett said, having the family together, watching him play football is kind of an asset to them, not something he views as something bad.
If I can pivot off, a moment of levity here. I like movies, so I always like movie quotes. And there's a line in the most recent Batman movie, I think it was The Dark Knight Rises with Christian Bale, and the character looks at him and she says, "Why did you give everything to them?" And he goes, "I haven't given them everything, not yet." I still think it means something to Drew Brees, who is so invested in this community and who is so woven into the fabric post-Katrina, to get this franchise back to the top of the mountain. One more Super Bowl, win or lose, just getting back to the big game. I really think that that truly means something to him. Call me crazy. I just think that that is the one last achievement, the crowning achievement that he wants in his career as an NFL player for the organization and the city. And I also think that when we're talking about reasons about retirement, when it goes south for athletes post 40, it has gone south pretty quickly for Kobe Bryant, for Derek Jeter. Peyton Manning was knocking on the door at 40, and Brett Favre,
yeah.
and I think that that is something for him to consider. Do you go out on top at the top of your game, or do you go out when your skills have obviously diminished to the point of not being as effective as you are? And I do think that that is something for him to consider. But I think he's coming back because I think that everything he has meant to this organization and this city, he wants to be at that big game for all of these people in this city and himself in this franchise just one more time.
I mean, look, you can look at Eli Manning here, not to go too into the weeds on this, but Eli Manning has retired, being benched his last year in pro football 4 years ago. That would have been unthinkable, and now he's retiring after essentially being benched in his final season. Let's just move forward with Drew Brees. If he comes back, what does that mean for the Saints roster? I mean, he's going to command, like Brett said, we could talk about the money here. He's going to command $30 million probably. I don't know if it's a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal. I know Mickey Loomis is great with the numbers, but what does that mean for the Saints, for the salary cap, and then for Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill? We'll start with you. Let's start with you, Cap. We haven't started with you yet. Go ahead.
Started first.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't necessarily think he's going to command $30 million. What I think is going to happen is that he and Mickey Loomis are going to sit down and have a talk. The Saints are going to present their side, and if you take less money, we'll be able to go sign more free agents. And the Saints can back that up because they sign a lot of free agents.
But to just jump in, has he ever done that before? I mean, really, he's taken what the market has paid him. He has not done the
He
Tom
hasn't
Brady
set precedent
sweetheart
since
deal,
2012,
right?
but he doesn't take hometown
Right.
deals. I don't think he's going to set precedent, but I also don't think he's going to take $10 million
Right.
less than market
Right.
value.
I would agree with that, but I think he'll probably take a little bit less than market value, and we'll see what that is. But there is a lot of pressure from the NFLPA and agents and things like that to not take too low of a deal. But I mean, Tom Brady has done it for years. So that'll be interesting. But I think it's kind of like dominoes. If Brees comes back, then that means Teddy Bridgewater goes elsewhere. I just don't see him staying here as a backup. He has to leave while, I guess, strike while the iron is hot or whatnot. And I think Taysom Hill will be back. So it kind of all depends on Brees, and then they go from there.
Is that why he has to make a decision quickly here? He said he should have one by mid to late February.
Right. I mean, there's contract considerations for the Saints as well, and I also believe that he won't push the market. He'll try to come up with a contract that he thinks is fair, one that he can play up to, if not outplay. I always say in a salary cap league, it's important to have a critical mass of players, if you will, that can kind of outplay the value of their contract in order to really compete for championships, which is what the Patriots have been really good at for years. And I would expect him to kind of do that. But I think the reason that he's giving the month timeline really is just because he wants people to stop asking the questions so he can enjoy Super Bowl week and just kind of chill out for a while before he before free agency make the decision.
And again, Mickey Loomis, I know that we've all covered the team a long time here. Really, the salary cap has not been an issue because they have always found a way to navigate it. I know the term kicking the can down the road, or however they structure things, it seems like the national media or people outside of this bubble talk about they're handcuffed and they're in salary cap jail, yet they always seemingly figure it out. So I'm not really worried about. I remember in 2012 they were talking about Brees getting the highest deal in NFL history, $20 million a year, surpassing Peyton Manning's 19.6. And who will you have to cut and what will you have to do? And they structured the deal in a way where their roster remained intact for that season because of the way they structured it. So again, I'm not really worried about his salary structure or how it looks in the grand scheme of things in their roster. There's always comings and goings, but I think that they find a way to navigate it.
It's also notable that a lot of times when they sign these big name free agents, the first year salary cap hit is very small. So if they're thinking, all right, we have one more year with Brees, they could theoretically go sign a major free agent and just have a small salary cap hit for this 1 year and then figure it out next year if they are rebuilding. I could use Jairus Byrd as an example. Everyone said they were in salary cap jail that year, and they say it every year, and they go out and sign Jairus Byrd for, I think it was 4 or 5 years, $54 million. What was it?
It was the richest deal for a safety in NFL
right,
history.
But when you go back and look at that contract, his first year is relatively low. It's actually the same thing with Michael Thomas this year. His salary cap hit jumps up a ton next year, but I think it's just the way they do it with their bonuses.
And just to jump in there, the Jarvis Bird contract and the player himself, kind of a disaster for the Saints. But we'll move on from that.
But they were able to sign the
I
free
agree.
agent.
Yes,
but yes,
not the best
it
signing.
didn't work out. But
I agree with you, Brett, you, Kat, and you, Fletcher. I think Drew Brees is coming back as well. I think he's got so much more to give, and I really agree with the fact that it's a money thing, it's a championship thing, it's a family thing. Let's just push that aside and kind of suspend disbelief here. What if he makes a major announcement this week or next week and says, you know what, that's it, I'm not playing football anymore? What do the Saints do then? Is it Teddy Bridgewater? Is it Taysom? Is it another free agent? I mean, how do they operate and move on in what could be a possible, I know nobody wants to hear about it or talk about it, but a post-Drew Brees era?
My opinion, I don't know how you all feel about this, I am under the belief that it's Taysom Hill, and there's no doubt about it, that they do have, I don't know if Taysom's going to be a great NFL quarterback or even a good starting NFL quarterback, but I think they look at the ingredients and say all the ingredients are there, and we have had him for 3 years, and we believe enough in him, in what today's NFL is with Allen and Jackson, in the way quarterbacks move now, and I think they feel comfortable. Now, I think they would sign a veteran backup, but I think they would hand the keys to the car to Taysom Hill and not blink doing it.
What do you think, Kat?
see, I disagree. I think they would go with Teddy. I think in their eyes, Teddy improved his value. Now, maybe it wouldn't be a huge deal, and you would still retain Taysom Hill, but I don't know that Hill has proven that he's ready to be a starting quarterback yet. I mean, he does a lot of amazing things, and he looked like the best player on the field in the wild card game, but how do we know if he's starting every week that he's going to be the guy? You have to have a guy like Teddy, and you could afford both of them. You can't afford all three of them theoretically. Maybe they'll figure out how to do it.
So same question. If Brees says, if he shocks the world and says, that's it, I'm done playing football, what do the Saints
Break
do
the
in your
tie
opinion?
here, Brett, and
I
tell
know,
me
break
Taysom
the
is
tie,
doing
right?
that.
Please do, right? Or give us something really wacky. If you
Yeah,
want.
no, not wacky. I'm inclined to think that the safest bet is Teddy Bridgewater because he's been in that offense for 2 years, went 5-0 as a starter last year, and that would give them the flexibility to continue to use Taysom Hill as a utility player. Or the Swiss Army knife or whatever you call him here when he's on WDSU. so anyway, that would be the most seamless transition, I think, since they've already demonstrated they can win that way last year.
And do you think he stays, even if another team says, hey, we're going to put the Saints in a bidding war, we're going to overpay Teddy? Do you think the Saints overpay? And do you think it seems like he wants to stay? If all things are equal between, I'm making this up, but if it's Tampa, the Redskins, the Saints looking for Teddy, I think he stays with the Saints.
Well, sure, he stayed with the Saints last year because I think he felt like he had a good situation here. Hypothetically, if Drew Brees moved on, and hypothetically, if Teddy was the guy, I don't know if there's it would have to be such a crazy number to lure him away. I certainly think the Saints would pay him like a starting quarterback.
He said in an interview yesterday, I'm not thinking emotionally, I'm thinking like a businessman. So the numbers would have to be fairly close. I do think he loves it in New Orleans, but he's not going to take, $5 million less to stay in New Orleans. I mean, he's got to do whatever maximizes his value, which is why he's not going to stay to be a backup this year. So it'll be interesting, but I do
Can I
think
jump
he
in
wants
real
to be
quick?
back.
Sorry to interrupt you here, Travis.
Quickly, because we're running out of
All
time.
right, I'll be quick here. Somebody asked me this. Do they think the Saints are bluffing on Taysom Hill to try to get another team to bite? Because if they put a first-round tender on him, they'll get a first-round draft pick if, say,
This is
the
the final
Patriots.
question, so you can just ask
if
it.
the
Go ahead, there
Patriots,
you go.
I don't think that it's a bluff. I think they like Taysom Hill, but what do you all think about that?
Well, I don't think it's a bluff, but I think that they're going to put a first-round tender on him, like you said, and basically say, hey, if you want him that bad, come get him, and then we'll pick a quarterback in the first round. They don't want to lose him, but, I mean, that's the business, so it's good either
Does
way.
somebody come after Taysom Hill and give the Saints a first-round pick?
That's a tricky question because not every coach, when you think about their style and their philosophy about football, and also when you think about their roster, not every team is equipped to use Taysom Hill as effectively as the Saints have. Not every offense is the same. The Saints have and it's the same thing with Teddy Bridgewater. The Saints have a demonstrated ability to win with the way they use both those guys, and so it's also a business decision for them to want to win and stay put.
All right. Fletcher Mackel, Catherine Terrell from The Athletic, and Brett Martell from The Associated Press. Just finally, everybody thinks Drew Brees is coming back.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I agree with you. Let's all hope so. That's all the time we have for The Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackel.